Johnston. I'm a lawyer, as I think just about everybody here. And as being a lawyer, I'm empowered to take oaths, including the oath of office that the mayor-elect and council-elect are going to give in a moment. I myself was on council for a number of years, and I know the commitment it takes for time and energy and the dedication and sacrifice of a lot of personal time and personal life. So congratulations to all these. I would thank the outgoing council for their service to the community for the past 4 years, and welcome the new council. So the next order of business is the oath of office, and starting off is Mayor-elect Gary Souls.
I, Gary Leonard Souls, do solemnly affirm that I am qualified to hold the office of Mayor of the City of Revelstoke, to which I have been elected. I have not, by myself or any other person, knowingly contravened the Local Government Act respecting vote buying or intimidation in relation to my election to the office. I will faithfully perform the duties of my office and will not allow any private interest to influence my conduct in public matters. As required by the community charter, I will disclose any direct or indirect pecuniary interest I have in a matter, and I will not participate in the discussion of the matter and will not vote in respect of the matter.
You do so affirm?
I do affirm.
Next we're going in alphabetical order, so Mr. Brooks Hill is next on the list.
I, Michael John Brooks Hill, do solemnly affirm that I am qualified to hold the office of Councillor for the City of Revelstoke, to which I have been elected. I have not, by myself or any other person, knowingly contravened the Local Government Act respecting vote buying or intimidation in relation to my election to the office. I will faithfully perform the duties of my office and will not allow any private interest to influence my conduct in public matters. As required by the community charter, I will disclose any direct or indirect pecuniary interest I have in the matter and will not participate in the discussion of the matter and will not vote in respect of the matter.
You do so affirm?
I do.
Doesn't go away. And Nicole Shirlett.
I, Nicole Leanne Shirlett, do solemnly affirm that I am qualified to hold the office of Councillor for the City of Revelstoke, to which I have been elected. I have not, by myself or any other person, knowingly contravened the Local Government Act respecting vote buying or intimidation in relation to my election to the office. I will faithfully perform the duties of my office and will not allow any private interest to influence my conduct in public matters. As required by the community charter, I will disclose any direct or indirect pecuniary interest I have in a matter and will not participate in the discussion of the matter and will not vote in respect of the matter.
You do so affirm?
I do.
Next we have Stephen Cross.
I, Stephen Albert Cross, do solemnly affirm that I am qualified to hold the office of Councillor for the City of Revelstoke, to which I have been elected. I have not, by myself or any other person, knowingly contravened the Local Government Act respecting vote buying or intimidation in relation to my election to the office. I will faithfully perform the duties of my office and will not allow interest to influence my conduct in public matters. As required by the community charter, I will disclose any direct or indirect pecuniary interest I have in a matter and will not participate in the discussion of that matter and will not vote in respect of that matter.
You do so affirm.
I do.
We have Robert Elliott. No, he was Rob, so I had to stutter a little bit there. So.
I, Robert Stephen Elliott, do solemnly affirm that I am qualified to hold the office of councillor for the city of Revelstoke, to which I have been elected. I have not by myself or any other person knowingly contravening the Local Government Act, respecting vote buying or intimidation in relation to my election to the office. I will faithfully perform the duties of my office and will not allow my private interests to influence my conduct in public matters. As required by the community charter, I will disclose any direct or indirect pecuniary interest I have in a matter and will not participate in the discussion of the matter and will not vote in respect of the matter.
You so affirm.
I affirm.
Lucky Ryan. Jacqueline.
I, Jacqueline Elizabeth Ryan, do solemnly affirm that I am qualified to hold the office of councillor for the city of Revelstoke, to which I have been elected. I have not, by myself or any other person, knowingly contravened the Local Government Act respecting vote buying or intimidation in relation to my election to the office. I will faithfully perform the duties of my office and will not allow any private interest to influence my conduct in public matters. As required by the community charter, I will disclose any direct or indirect pecuniary interest I have in a matter and will not participate in the discussion of the matter and will not vote in respect of the matter.
You do so affirm.
I affirm.
And Cody Yunker.
I, Jason Cody Younger, do solemnly affirm that I am qualified to hold the office of councillor for the city of Revelstoke, to which I have been elected. I have not, by myself or any other person, knowingly contravened the Local Government Act, respecting vote buying or intimidation in relation to my election to the office. I will faithfully perform the duties of my office and will not allow any private interest to influence my conduct in public matters. As required by the charter, I will disclose any direct or indirect pecuniary interest I have in a matter and will not participate in the discussion of the matter and will not vote in respect of the matter.
And you do so affirm.
I do.
No left-handed councillors. So I think that concludes it. I just wanted to say a word of thanks to the other persons who ran in the election and were not elected, because their participation is part of the process that makes it work. So thanks to them as well. And now I turn it over to Mayor Gary Foltz. Thank you, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your presence here today. I want to welcome you to the inaugural meeting of the 2018-2022 Revelstoke City Council. And to my fellow councillors, congratulations. Thank you for standing up for the community and for your presence here. It very much is appreciated. And to those who also stood up during the election process, we would like to thank them as well. I want to go further to say to the previous council, which I sat on, I want to thank them for giving us the base to which we will build our community council. And every council that's gone before them has given every council a base. We are not here today because of one particular group. We are here today because of every group. So I want to thank everyone for that. I want to thank the staff for their support. I want to thank them for their support before we've even engaged them, because it is through them that we will be able to get our work done. So thank you again. We're about to start our meeting, and I'm going to ask for a motion on number 5A. Is there a councillor that will make that motion, please? Councillor Shalat.
That the 2018 local government election results report from the Chief Election Officer dated October 24th, 2018 be received for information.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Motion's passed. Number 6A, we're into appointments. Someone read that for me, please. Councillor Cross.
That the 2018 to 2022 Select Committee and Commission appointments be approved as presented.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Rind. All those in favor? Motion's passed. We're going to go on to the next page, 6B, number 1. Councillor Rind.
That Mayor Gary Sauls, Councillor Cody Younger, and Councillor Michael Brookshill be appointed as directors for Revelstoke Community Energy Corporation.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Charlotte. All those in favor? Motion's passed. Part 2, please.
That Mayor Gary Sauls, Councillor Rob Elliott, Councillor Jackie Rind, and Councillor Stephen Cross be appointed as directors for Revelstoke Community Forest Corporation.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Yonker. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Number C. Somebody do number 1. Councillor Yonker.
That Mayor Gary Sauls be appointed Municipal Director and Councillor Stephen Cross be appointed alternate Municipal Director to the Board of the Columbia-Shuswap Regional District.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Brookshill. All those in favor? Motion carries. Number 2.
That Councillor Stephen Cross be appointed as Director and Councillor Michael Brooks Hill be appointed as alternate Director to the Board of the Okanagan Regional Library.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Charlotte. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
That Mayor Gary Sauls be appointed as Director and Chief Administrative Officer Alan Chabot be appointed as alternate to the Municipal Insurance Association of BC, the MIA-BC Board.
I have a seconder for that motion. Councillor Cross. All those in favor? Motion's carried. On to item D, liaison appointments. Someone want to read that? Councillor Cross.
That the 2018 to 2022 Community Organization Liaison appointments be approved as presented.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rind. All in favor? Motion carries. Going to go on to item E. Councillor Cross.
That the 2018 to 2022 Acting Mayor assignments be approved as presented.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Yonker. All those in favor? Motion passes. Item 7A. Councillor Elliott.
That the schedule of regular council, committee of the whole, committee and commission meeting dates for 2019 be approved.
Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Cross. All those in favor? Motion carries. And carry on,
And
please.
that notice in accordance to the community charter be provided to the public.
Seconder for that? Councillor Brookshill. All in favor? Motion carries. Item 8A. Someone bring that forward. Councillor Yonker.
That the city enter into an operating agreement with Cedar and Spruce Consulting for the operation and maintenance of Williamson Lake Park and Campground for a 3-year term with an option to extend the agreement for an additional 2 years on the same terms and conditions except the annual fee with agreement of both parties.
Do you want me to stop there or I'll carry on with them?
Do the next part too, please.
Okay. And the next part too, please.
And that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the agreement on behalf of the city.
I have a seconder for the motion. Councillor Charlotte. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Cross.
Your Worship, I do have some concerns, or concern areas, I should say. Based on the documents we were given, I'd like to see more financial information on this proposal before voting on it. And I'd like to know a little bit more about the procedure for the award of the contract. I note that the point system is very, very close, which I respect. I'm sure staff have done excellent work on that. But I'd also like to know, did the incumbent bid on this, or is this 3 new players that we have?
Mr. Nano, could you enlighten us on that, please?
Sure, through your worship. The city requested proposals for the maintenance and operation of Williamson Lake Park through the bonfire portal system. So through that system, we received 3 proposals. Cedar Spruce Consulting, Revelstoke Resort Shuttle, which was the previous caretaker, and Hayum Properties Limited. The proposals were evaluated using the following criteria: experience and qualifications, proposed equipment list, pricing, level to which the proposal meets the city's objectives, and the quality of the proposal. The proposals were reviewed by myself and the Director of Community Economic Development. We went down to Williamson's Lake Park as well and had a tour of the site and individually graded the proposals. So with the 3 proposals, I'll just give you a brief summary of what we found with them. Cedar and Spruce Consulting was the highest ranked proponent. Their proposal was concise, relevant, and thorough. We felt they had relevant experience in operating campgrounds, especially with other campground areas. Revelstoke Resort Shuttle, that caretaker is highly experienced with the operation of the existing campground. Past performance indicates that a lack of improvements benefited the public versus the campground. There was some substandard maintenance issues with the campground as well. She ranked a little bit lower than the highest ranked proponent for that reason. The 3rd proponent, Hayum Properties, the scope of the project that they proposed in their RFP was above and beyond what we were asking. There was a lot of improvements planned for the site, both on and off site. They own the neighboring property to Williamson's Lake. So a lot of that development was included in this proposal, which is not something we were asking for. We were strictly asking for the maintenance and operation of the existing park as is. Their proposal was good and probably would be well received at a later date when they had a lot of their development in order. It was not the appropriate time for that proposal for this RFP. The proponents have land development and tourism industry experience, but no relevant campground experience. And the pricing information in their proposal was not broken down. So they were graded lower than the other proponents for those reasons.
Councilor Cross, does that answer all of your questions?
Just a couple follow-up questions, if I may. Ms. Donato, when the first 2 bids, which were very close, I'm assuming the financial component was similar? Could you clarify that for me?
It was similar, both to some extent. The highest ranked proponent had high versus low season campground fees and proposed an additional percentage in years 4 and 5. And the second highest ranked proponent had a consistent percentage throughout the 5 years.
Through the 5, right. And so if I heard you right, the big issue with the incumbent was some maintenance issues were done as well as we would have liked them to be done. Is that correct?
No, that was not the big issue.
Okay.
We just felt overall that her proposal didn't stand out amongst the other proposals. There was nothing in that proposal that brought it above the other proposal.
Okay. And I have a different question. I noticed in the actual contract, it specifies 15% for the 3 years with the option to renew for 2. And in the report to council, it says 15% for the 3, and it locks in at 16 on the renewal if it happens.
Yeah, that could have been an oversight in the agreement, which we could correct and add into the agreement.
Or take out. My thought is that locking in at 16 3 years from now seems premature.
There is the option to terminate the agreement as well. The city has the option to terminate after 3 years.
So you're saying the 16 after 3 is not a lock-in?
It's not a lock-in, it's a guideline, I would say, that, I mean, if the gross revenue numbers come in consistently higher and higher, we definitely want to reevaluate that 16%. It may not be realistic to ask that.
Right.
With new caretakers on board, sometimes it takes a couple years to get the reservation system up and running, to get the replete clientele, and to have those revenue numbers go up.
Mm-hmm. Right, obviously.
It's something we can renegotiate after year 3.
Okay, so that 16 isn't a lock-in. And I know other people probably want to ask questions, but I have one more for you. We know we're subsidizing Williamson Lake as a city, and I personally think that's a good thing. I'd like to know the degree of subsidy. And in regard to that, do you have any idea what our total city investment at Williamson Lake is, and what the 15% proposed fee would represent in terms of a return on that investment?
I have some
Year by
numbers
year.
for you, but, so Williamson's Lake is assessed at 3.4 million, just over 3.4 million. On an annual basis, we usually budget between, I would say, $2,000 to $5,000 for operating and maintenance expenses at Williamson's Lake. There was one year where we had a higher, like a $10,000 O&M budget for that. And there was some improvements that we had to do that year, but usually between 2 and 5 for O&M, and then any capital expenditures, and those tend to vary from year to year. So what were they? Oh, so that, sorry, the 2,000 to 5,000 was operating and maintenance for the facilities. We have the day use building and the campground washroom facility, so we usually budget 2 to 5 for that. And then I also include about $2,000 to $3,000 for park staff. We maintain the trees at Williamson's Lake, so any type of danger tree or any landscaping work that has to be done with the campground sites, we might have to go in there and help out with that. So we do have a budget for that for park staff. So it's anywhere between $2,000 to $10,000 between the facilities and the park space is what we would budget on an annual basis. And then the capital expenditures vary, and those are brought forward through the financial plan each year. To date, did you provide me with those?
They're on the very bottom.
Oh, sorry, they are on the bottom. So that varies as well. We've had capital expenditures as high as $30,000 in a year, and then as low as $4,000.
Our invested cost so far is $3.4 million in total, is that correct?
That's the assessed value
Oh, the assessed value of the land.
of the land and the buildings,
Okay.
just to put it in context for you.
Right, that's what I need.
Yeah.
And finally, what would, in terms of an estimated revenue at 15%, what would that number be, roughly?
Well, in 2017, we received almost $29,000.
So you can see when we talk about the big picture is Williamson's Lake provides so many amenities for the community as a whole that the community is subsidizing that part, but the amenities that come back in tourism dollars for the entire community, where people come and spend money in our restaurants, in our camping stores, in our retail stores, where they go and buy a tube or whatever for our kids to play on the lake. Those are almost invaluable. So as much as we say that we're bringing it's bringing community together, and it allows our local community to engage and get a chance for our kids to learn to swim and be down there, and that's
I fully support that, Your Worship. Yeah.
so young.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you, Ms. Donato, I got a couple questions. One of them is just being, when you mentioned the subpar maintenance, was the caretaker notified of the maintenance levels, like ongoing through the contract, or was that at the end of the contract when you guys were walking the site, or how did that work? Like, do city staff ongoingly check maintenance of the buildings? I'm just looking for clarification there. And then as well, when the tender was put out and the people, or the companies put in their contracts, were they told what they would be ranked or graded on? Like, did they know what they were to be, or how the scoring system would work? Were they told how that system would work?
Through your worship, yes, they were. It's all outlined in the request for proposal document, the criteria and the weighting.
Yeah, I saw that. I just was wondering if it was broken down more, or just those general ones. Okay.
That's the breakdown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's in the RFP document.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on the motion? Councillor Ryan.
Your worship, I'm just wondering if all 5 criteria were given the same weight, or if it was different.
Mr. Nano?
Your worship, no, the weights were broken down. Experience and qualifications was weighted at 30 points. Equipment list was 15. Pricing was 30. Level to which the proposal meets the city's objectives was 15, and the quality of the proposal was 10, for a total of 100 points.
Any further discussion? Councillor Charlotte.
Question, we were talking about the $2,000 to $5,000 for operating and maintenance expenses, but when I look at the responsibilities of the city in that campground, I don't see, there's the snow removal, posting signs, but a lot of the day-to-day operational cost seems to be borne by the operator. So especially in those public day use areas, things like toilet paper and paper towel, I have personal experience with how expensive that can get. So I'm just curious about that operating and maintenance expenses when we're talking about subsidizing that day use facility, just to make sure that we're subsidizing sufficiently for those operations.
Mr. Nano.
Your worship, the operating and maintenance for the facility is for the building structures.
Okay.
So we would have staff inspect the buildings, we would repair any issues with the building, the exterior of the building. If there's a major plumbing issue, we would take care of that issue. If there was a major septic issue, we would take care of that. As for the day-to-day use, it is the caretaker's responsibility. Clogged toilets, that type of thing, it's their responsibility. Upkeep and painting of the buildings would be our responsibility.
Councillor Young.
Thanks. Just one further question, Mr. Mom. Was there a list of complaints that was received from the public about, like, I know a lot of people that come and camp there have lots of good things to say, but is there a list or a certain number of complaints that were received by the city about lack of facilities, that kind of thing, that was taken into consideration?
For this RFP?
Yeah, like with the current caretaker, was there a lot of complaints? Have we experienced complaints over the past few years with the caretaker that was currently managing it? Because you mentioned subpar maintenance and stuff. I'm wondering if there was also complaints with service levels or anything about that.
Your worship, I do not think this is appropriate for this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Neto. So, Councillor Yonker, when we provide an RFP out, we are now starting fresh with that RFP, and we're providing that out to the community to give a proposal. The previous contractor is not ranked on their previous work in the determination of their RFP. However, bearing in mind that our experience has told us that there have been some deficiencies in the past, we can't erase that from our minds. So I want you to bear that in mind, no matter what we're doing. So when the RFP goes out, it's a fresh slate. Okay. And so everybody is able to make their determination on how they can do their facilitating the contract, and they put that down on paper as to how they feel that they can do that. And so the determination of the RFP is based on that. Perfect. However, as Mr. Nano has said, yep, there may have been some issues, but there may have been issues with other contractors down the road as well, and that really doesn't have a bearing on this RFP. So right. Just so that you're aware of that. So thank you for that. Any other discussion on the motion? Councillor Cross.
Your Worship, I just have one, and I probably just my education here. So the incumbent, the second bid, has a great track record with the service and understands the campground. So when I've been in business, we've usually done RFPs, and if an incumbent has a good track record, they usually get to continue if they can show corrective measures for any complaints. It may be different at the municipal level, so I'm looking for guidance on that question I have in my head.
So I'll just go briefly in dealing with RFPs. There's a certain time period that we can carry out an RFP, or that we can have one contractor doing the work before we have to return to the RFP.
Right.
And Mr. Chabot may be able to enlighten a little bit further on that.
Yeah, Your Worship, we reached the point where we needed to tender the work, despite an agreement with the current operator purporting to provide opportunities for extension beyond a term of 5 years. We're statutorily limited to entering into agreements that incur a capital liability on part of the city in excess of 5 years, unless the electors approve it either by a counter petition process or by referendum, neither of which took place with respect to this contract. So we had to go out and tender it. With respect to procuring for local government, we're prohibited from having preferred vendor policies or local first policies.
Yeah.
We're subject to international and interprovincial trade agreements that make it prohibited to have those types of policies in our procurement. And so this is 100% on the criteria set out in the RFP, of which all the proponents were made aware of. And as impartial as a process that involves some, I guess, subjective and qualitative assessment of submissions made.
Right. Just to clarify, I'm aware of those restrictions on you can't favor local. So just so we're clear, my question was about an incumbent having an opportunity to address deficiencies, perceived deficiencies. And I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and I don't think prior performance in providing the service was a consideration in the evaluation of the bids provided.
Right, that's the answer to the question I was looking for. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Just curious, the capital investment by the operator, do they put anything into the building pads and walls and separation particle, or is that part of the city infrastructure that we add to the park?
I believe that's part of the city infrastructure, but I'll defer to Mr. Now.
Your Worship, the caretaker does provide capital infrastructure. The mini golf belongs to the caretaker, the picnic tables, the fire pits, the campground dividers, that all belongs to the caretaker. The signage and the buildings belong to the city, but the rest belongs to the caretaker. So the day reception area office building, that would be something that the caretaker would provide.
They remove that when they...
Yeah, they remove that at changeover, yes.
Any further discussion? So I'm going to go back to the original motion where we are tendering an operating agreement with Cedar and Spruce Consulting for the operation and maintenance of Williams Lake Park and the campground for a 3-year term with an offer to extend. So I'm going to ask the question at this point. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion's defeated. Okay, thank you. That'll go back to square one, where the city staff will have to put the RFP out again. And so what that means is that the current people are their contract terminates at the end of the year. So we may be without a contractor, and means we will have to look after maintenance of that facility until something's put in. So usually when we have something like an RFP and the city staff provides us with all the agreements and the reasoning for putting that forward, it usually is the best agreement that's been put before us at that time. And so by turning this down means that now we need to go back out to the public process and ask for that again. Mr. Schwab.
Your Worship, I see puzzled looks not only on my own face, but some of the staff here today as well, because it seems as though council might be desirous of going a different direction with respect to Williamson's Lake. I don't know what a second RFP process might result in or if it would result in anything different. So probably what we would do is facilitate a discussion with council as to future direction respecting Williamson Lake Campground to determine what the desire is.
Okay. So we'll have to have a conversation about that as to what you feel, where our direction is, where we should be going. This is a community venue, a public venue, and we've just turned down a group of people who were prepared to operate that at a reasonable rate. So now I will be having conversations with you as to what you feel we need to be doing as far as going forward. Is there anything further, Councillor Elliott?
I think Alan just pegged exactly what I'm feeling. I think that there has been something put on the table for the park in 2016. There was a decision made by the community about what options were liked, or what considerations were in place for Williamson's Lake. And I don't know if that's where that is in the system. And making a decision for another term seems rushed at this point for me. I'm trying to understand.
I think when we have an RFP and we put it out, despite the fact that we've gone to the community as to what they wanted for a public plan for Williamson's Lake, those things cost money. And so we have, in our budget process, we'll deal with some of the things that we were going to put into that community plan that the community has already approved. But it's a time-consuming process, and it's based on values and money. And so we have that process, and as we go through that, we still need someone to operate the facility so that we have a facility that's working. It's like putting your car in storage, and after a period of time, things start to wear out if you don't utilize that facility or that car. And so that's a situation we're in now, is now that you've turned this down, we have to decide where do we go forward, how do we go forward with this process, and what dollar value are we going to put into that. And so the decision here basically means that we're in a boat without oars and not direction. We're just floating. And so we're going to have that conversation as to what we do, how we move forward, and before we actually say to our staff, we want you to put a new RFP, because if we put a new RFP and they go through all this work of providing people to do it, and it comes back to the table with a chance of it being turned down again, that's not going to happen. What we're going to do is we're going to get direction from you as to what you want to do with this, and realize that this is a community venue, and so by turning this down now, this means that we, the taxpayer, have to foot the bill for the next foreseeable future, and that's going to mean some money. So. Mr. Nano.
Your Worship, the concept plan that Councillor Elliott is referring to was the community-based concept plan for Williamson's Lake. It still includes a portion of the campground as part of Williamson's Lake. So moving forward, we need a caretaker to operate the campground and to do the day-to-day maintenance of Williamson's Lake. The improvements planned for Williamson's Lake will not happen next year. It's a budget process that it has to go through, but we still need someone to operate the campground. So that bigger discussion about Williamson's Lake and how we move forward with that development can be ongoing while a caretaker is in place. Having that discussion is going to take up more time, and we need to have a caretaker in place in order to start taking reservations for the campground so that it makes it attractive to someone to want that contract. But the two can happen at the same time, is what I'm trying to say, is that the discussion that I think council wants to have about the state of Williamson's Lake is a big discussion that's most likely going to take quite a bit of time, public consultation, proper budgeting process. It's going to be like a year, 2-year discussion. It's not going to happen before a caretaker's in place.
So then that means we're going to have to revisit this caretaker issue. very quickly. And we are not in a position where we can extend the current caretaker. That goes against municipal law, so we cannot do that. There's no way that we can offer that olive branch and say, please, will you carry on? So we're going to have a hard conversation in the next few weeks as to what we need to do. And I just want you all to be cognizant of that fact. So, Mr. Chabot, any further comments?
No, Your Worship, fine.
Okay. So I'm going to ask for termination of meeting, but before I do that, I just want to again congratulate council for their first meeting. I would like to give you 5 or 10 minutes to celebrate with your family. I'll ask questions of the media in a minute, Melissa. I'm going to get you before the end. Once we've terminated the meeting, you'll have a couple minutes to celebrate with your family. And I'm going to call you back because I would like to hold a council roundtable and just go over a few things. And I will dismiss the public at that point and just further go on to say that there is a bit of a gathering for family and friends after at Quartermaster. So, questions from the media?
Can I just have a clarification of which councillors voted for and against on the Williamson Lake RFP?
Ms. Floyd, could you?
Sorry. Against was Councillor Rind, Brooks Hill, Councillor Yonker, and Councillor Cross.
Thank you.
Councillor.
I voted for it.
That's what I mean, it was 4-2.
Did I misinterpret that? Who is voting in favor?
And yourself, Your Worship?
I was voting in favor.
That still wasn't clear. No, that's still not clear. So can you raise your hands real high if you voted? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Is that clear now?
Yes.
Okay. Any further questions from the media?
Not from now.
Okay. Motion to adjourn the meeting. Councillor Charlotte, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Thank you. This motion, meeting is